You know, typically the medical student will spend a long time cracking open a few cadavers and so on, but you know, long before they get to a real human person, there'll be hundreds and thousands of hours of clinical practice and theoretical training, instruction, and so on. If you want to be an airline pilot, they don't just give you a 747. You know, you log multiple hundreds of hours on the flight simulator, and then you do small planes and tandem flights and so on until you eventually graduate up to the hard stuff. And the point is you get a lot of training. I mean, a lifetime ago, I used to be a waiter at TGI Fridays. I've got no shame. I'm very happy to expose my frailties to you. I got a 2-week classroom induction to do that. You know, they put me in a classroom for 2 weeks and taught me about margaritas and fajitas. Things I will never forget, I assure you. I'm well trained in it. And yet, students who don't have a job, but they've got a role, are expected to come to school and do things that are quite complex, stuff that they've never been trained or taught in, and I find it's mad. So the most effective teachers do both. They proactively teach the behaviour they want to see before they need to see it. They do it beforehand. They do it before things go wrong. And they're very good at reacting and responding to misbehaviour. They've got really good systems in place when things go wrong. I hope that makes sense. I mean, it's as simple as it can be, a proactive and a reactive cycle. We do not emphasize the proactive stuff enough. The reactive side is still important. You must have both. And if you take one of these things away, the whole thing falls down. And I'll explain why. And I think the reason why many teachers are in this situation is because there's not a lot of training in behavior management. I am really hoping, and I really think it's possible, that after this session, you'll be able to think clearly and concisely and cohesively about what we need to do to get better behaviour in a classroom. That's the plan anyway. That's the plan. We'll see. You can tell me at the end. I would also suggest that it's really important for us to understand what motivates children, what motivates people in general. Now, there's a triangle, which I'm sure many of you will have seen before. And, you know, education loves a triangle, right? I don't know if you've done much teacher training. There's a lot of triangles in teacher training. Most of them are rubbish, if I'm honest. But right, education loves a diagram, like a learning bicycle or something. But this is quite useful. And it's interesting because it's not what we call a hard scientific model. It's just a useful model. It's just a useful descriptor. Abraham Maslow was a psychologist. In 1948, he came up with these categories of what is it that motivates people. And the reason why that's important, I think, is because if you know what people are trying to get, it's easier to understand how to get them to do the things we want them to do. Because a lot of our behavior is goal-oriented, that we do things to get something, we do things to obtain something. And that might be a long-term goal, like to become a surgeon or a fabulous teacher, so that might inspire you to do certain lifestyle choices and so on, like give up your friends and get used to eating porridge. I'm kidding. A life of luxury and glamour awaits you. But it also leads us to do short-term things too. Like, for instance, if you might shift in your chair to avoid the creeping sensation of pins and needles tingling up your backside into your back. Little things like that too. So we do a lot of things because we want a lot of things. Well, what are the things that we want? What motivates us? And Maslow came up with this rather neat summary, which I'm going to use here. The top category, the blue one, isn't particularly helpful, if I'm honest, and it wasn't very well substantiated. But the bottom four, I think, are quite useful just as a mental model. So the first one is physiological needs, which is basically that's the stuff we need to stay alive. The stuff that we need in order to function as organisms, like air, water, food. I should probably add Wi-Fi, Netflix, Tiger King, and Squid Games. And people will do a lot to achieve this stuff. If you're drowning, you'll do anything to stop drowning, or choking or something like that. If you're starving, you'll steal stuff. If you're freezing, you'll break into somebody's shed or house, to get warm. And you wouldn't normally do this kind of thing, but you do it because. Oh, sorry, if we could just ask people to turn off their microphones, please. Thank you very much. I'm getting some feedback here. Thank you very much. Miss Noor, thank you. So these are really big incentives to motivate things, to motivate us to do things. This is why when the CIA are torturing people, or sorry, other organizations are available. One of the things to do is keep them awake for night after night after night, because if you've been awake for 3 or 4 nights, you'll do anything to get sleep at that point. I mean, small children know this when they torture their parents with demands for late night snacks and so on. But It's one of those basic fundamental needs that we have, and we'll do anything to get it. And then above that, you get safety needs. They need to feel safe. They need to feel secure. And again, people will do a lot to feel safe and secure. I mean, for example, this is a very easy one to appreciate. You'll do a job that you don't like to feel safe and secure, so that you can pay your bills and have a roof over your head. Because nobody likes that feeling of, you know, sofa surfing around all their pals' house and thinking, you know, I've got nothing, I've got no bricks to, or no roof under which to live. It's really important that we have a door that we can lock and say good night to the world. So safety needs are really, really important. Or if I hear a noise in the garden, you know, I'll get up at 3 o'clock in the morning to check. And it takes a lot to get me out of bed at 3 o'clock in the morning. And then the next two, the esteem, love, and belonging, I want to try and focus on, because I think this is really important. If I can just summarize it, everybody needs to matter. Everyone needs to feel valuable and valued. Everyone needs to feel like they're worth something. And not feeling like that is awful. You know, despair will put you in the ground, and feeling alone or lonely is the perfect example of this. And I'm sure this resonates with a great many of us, that, you know, when you've had times when you felt a bit dislocated from your friends, or you know, you felt like nobody cares about you, or something like that. It's awful. It's all, and you'll do a lot to get that kind of stuff. You'll call some friends because you feel like a chat. Why do you feel like a chat? You feel like a chat because you're a bit lonely, or you want to find out something about what they're doing. You want to connect with people. We find a huge amount of meaning in our relationships with other people. People will travel the world to find love. You know, people will drive through the night to get home to their kids at Christmas. You know, people will spend a fortune to be with people. And I think, if I'm honest, I think lockdown 1 was a really good example of this. You know, the ways in which we missed people that we couldn't see, that we cared, that we loved during that very, very difficult, certainly the first lockdown in particular, was quite profound. And it showed just how much we missed people and how much we want to be with people. This is a big driver of our behaviour. An interesting thing for me in terms of a school, because this is relevant to schools, I promise you, very relevant, is that people will do a lot to achieve all this stuff. Now, the first two, the safety and the physiological needs, if you've got all that stuff, you don't think about it. If you've got, I mean, when was the last time you thought to myself, oh, this is lovely air that I'm breathing, thank goodness for that. But if you were drowning, it's all you would think about. But love and belonging and esteem, it's one of these things that kind of stays with us constantly. Everybody kind of needs it. And people will do so much to achieve it. And people will do good and bad things to achieve it. So, for example, you might have a child in your class who's a show-off because they want attention. They want people to notice them. They want to feel like they've got some kind of meaning, like they've had some kind of impact. They don't want to feel invisible. Or you might get a child that sits far to the curtains for exactly the same reason. Or you might get a child who's really, really good, you know, extremely well behaved and helps you all the time for the same reason. Or a child who's quiet but does incredibly well, studies and studies and studies, because they want you to say, oh, that's a really good bit of work, and so on. This is my point. We'll do a lot of very different things to achieve this stuff. It's a big, big motivator of us. Status, belonging, and so on. And I used to do a lot of work with some of the gangs in the East End of London. And one of the interesting things about that is that it's very hard to get kids out of gangs because it's their friends, it's their friendship group, it's where they find esteem, it's where they find a sense of belonging and community and status, and you know, we care about you and you care about us, and we share some of our values, and well done, we love you. This is where they get all that from. So kids will do good and bad things to obtain it. It's also a part of why some people become radicalized by extreme faith positions and extreme religious organizations. Or political organizations, because they normally feel, people who do get radicalized or induced into a cult or something like that, it's normally people who are feeling a bit dislocated, a bit lonely, often educationally below average, often a history of soft drug use, and so, you know, there's this big sense of, I don't feel very valuable, I tend to numb it with drugs, and then all of a sudden this organization comes along and says, we care about you. It's powerful stuff. I guess my simple line for this slide is to say that we can really motivate kids to be good and to do the right thing and to behave and to study hard and to be kind and to cooperate, all the rest of it, if they can obtain status and meaning and recognition and intimacy and a sense of connection through being good. But if they get that stuff by being naughty or being bad or misbehaving or whatever you call it, then a lot of them will do that too. That's real food for thought. So you have to ask yourself, how can we make kids feel good with themselves? I mean, we can talk about praise as well, and I certainly will later on. But one of the first things you've got to do is to understand that kids need to feel like they matter to you and that their behavior matters to you. And if they feel invisible, then they won't feel that. If they feel that you don't know their name, they won't feel that. If they feel like, oh, you don't have to bring in your homework, who cares? They won't feel that. If they're hurt or upset or something, and you don't mention something at some point, they won't feel that. So the important thing is to let kids know that they matter to you. And that doesn't mean by gushing over them and saying, oh, I love you so much. I mean, I used to start all my lessons by saying, welcome to my class. I really look forward to teaching you. I love my subject and I love teaching people like you, my subject. And I want you to be safe in this classroom. I don't want you to be under any threat of violence or intimidation or anything at all. No bullying goes on in this room. I want this classroom to be a calm place where we can all hear each other. We can all relax to some extent and work hard, if such a thing is possible. And I want this to be a room where we're all treated with dignity. Where you matter and I matter too, I might add. And I don't care how well you've done before. I'm going to make sure you do well. You can really succeed in this classroom. I'll work my socks off to make sure that happens. But I need you to do it too. And in order for all of this stuff to happen, here's how we're going to behave. And that was it's not complicated, but that was my very, very simple pitch to the class. But there was lots of little beats going on there. I matter, you matter, learning matters, what you do matters. I'll notice stuff. I'll keep you safe. I'll look after you, but you've got rights and responsibilities. Kids need to hear that. Maybe not that speech, but they need to hear that and they need to feel it. And if you work with children from very challenging environments, children with very dislocated or difficult behavior, you'll probably find that they need that a lot more than others. Now, so why do kids misbehave? Well, how long is a piece of string? Excuse me, let me just oil the mechanism.